I was Googling the Coriolis effect. I remembered that from school, and I couldn't remember exactly what it was. You could tell me.
Nonsense.
It's nonsense.
Well, yeah, it's nonsense. Oh, well, okay, let me ask you this. If mainstream science tells us that we live on a ball that spins at 100,000 miles an hour at the equator. Now, if the Coriolis effect is, it was invented by a guy named Coriolis. He said that if we live on a ball that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, then snipers need to account for that spin. Right. So there's supposedly this mythical Coriolis effect that snipers need to account for it. Right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because if the
I know
world
about
is spinning,
this. Yeah.
Right.
They do the yeah.
So if you wanted to calculate the motion of a missile, would the Coriolis effect be included in that How important would the Coriolis effect be?
Yeah, I don't know. I would assume it's important.
Super important,
I would assume so.
If we're trying to calculate the speed of a missile, the trajectory of a missile, right? We would have to
If
calculate.
it affects a bullet, I figured it affects a missile.
Of course.
You would think.
Yeah, and not only is the ball spinning at 1,000 miles an hour, which we need to account for that if we're calculating motion of missiles and high altitude aircrafts, but it's also curved too. So we have to account for the curve. So the formula, the Coriolis, the mythical Coriolis effect, the formula does that. It's if you have to calculate because the Earth is spinning from west to east, according to them, or east to west. What is it?
West to east.
West to east, right?
West to east.
So
sun sets in the west.
The opposite of rotating is non-rotating, right?
Sure.
Okay. The opposite of a ball is a flat surface, right?
Sure.
That's the opposite, right? Crazy tinfoil. One of the craziest tinfoil hat conspiracies ever is that we live on a flat plane, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Right? For sure, right?
Yeah.
You agree with that. Okay, so Rob Skiba, who's a flat Earth researcher, he put out a video. He went through all these declassified NASA documents and CIA documents and U.S. military documents that had nothing to do with the shape of the Earth or space or all these documents, these top secret documents that were declassified, were all about calculating the motion of missiles and high altitude aircraft. There's a bunch of them. Rob Skiba he goes to the website, he goes to the NASA website and he goes, look, boom. And he's going through all these pages, all about missiles and how fast they go and the trajectory and all that shit. And then when you get to the formula of how to calculate all there's at least 10 or 15 of these documents that release all of them. The first number one rule of the formula is to get these numbers right. And do you think the numbers have to be accurate if you're trying to calculate? It has to be super accurate, right? So that Coriolis effect, the fact that the ball is rotating 1,000 miles an hour and it's curved, you have that to get the right numbers. You would have to factor that in, right? Well, all of them say the number one rule is you have to assume that we're on a flat, non-rotating Earth. Word for word, you have to assume that we're on a flat, non-rotating Earth. Has nothing to do with flat Earth documents or
FAA manual says the same thing.
All of them. The only way you're going to get the right answers, because they're not arguing about, like, if they don't get the right answers, we got this formula, we have to figure out the motion of missiles. That shit has to be right. In the military, it has to be fucking right. So wait a minute. So what are the odds? Hold on. What are the odds that to get the numbers right when calculating the motion of missiles, what are the odds that you have to assume that we live on this crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy flat Earth that's non-rotating? To get the right numbers, you have to pretend that we live on this tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. The opposite. In order to get the numbers right, you have to calculate the opposite of the reality that they're trying to shove down our throats. To get the numbers right, we have to be on a flat, non-rotating Earth. What's the opposite of rotating? Non-rotating. What's the opposite of a ball? A flat. So to calculate the numbers, to get them right, or they're going to be fired. They're going to get the numbers wrong. They got missiles. They got the calculations have to be precise. You have to assume that we live on a tinfoil hat, crazy conspiracy theory.
Eddie,
Think about that.
The sniper. Think about this. If a sniper has to account for Coriolis, when he's looking, he has to move the gun way to the left or to the right of the target and aim at nothing, which no sniper ever does.
Right.
Exactly. And you know what? You know what? Snipers, you know, it's funny. I have a friend who's a sniper. He worked for Blackwater, Marine sniper, legit striper. So when the Coriolis effect argument came up, I called him up. And you know him. I called him up and I said, hey, is the Coriolis effect real? And because he wanted to appear that he knew what he was talking about, because he heard about the Coriolis effect. He goes, oh yeah, the Coriolis effect is real. It's real. I go, it's real? I go, so if you were going to snipe somebody right now, you would know how to calculate that? You know what he said? He went, I would have to go back into the books and figure it out. but it's real. I go, wait a minute. So you're not a sniper until you go back and figure this thing out? So it turns out no snipers use the Coriolis effect. They don't. He finally admitted it. He never has. I go, when you're practicing shooting targets at a long range, you actually doing some mathematical fucking Coriolis effect? No, but what happens when you look into it, like there's a manual. There's a manual when you enter the armed forces, and it's like it's probably a chapter. They go, you know what? Because the guy who invented the Coriolis effect, he wasn't trying to deceive anybody. He was just saying, wait a minute, if we're rotating at 1,000 miles an hour, there must be an effect, so we have to account for that. So he didn't really know. If we were on a ball rotating 1,000 miles an hour, there would be a Coriolis effect. But since there's not, there isn't. So it's all bullshit. Document after document, declassified NASA.